Hello, good morning or good evening, wherever you may be around the world today. And thank you for joining us on Conversations with Jack. Today I have Federico Kunze, who is a core developer at Interchain Berlin and has helped build the Cosmos for a number of years at this point. And we'll talk to Fedi a bit. But first, I just want to say a quick thank you to our sponsors. First being Sommelier Protocol, or Sommelier Finance, which is my current company, and also Federico is working on that too, in collaboration with OmniFlix Media, and the team there continues to produce Conversations with Jack, and they've done a fantastic job. So thank you, Sisla, and the rest of the team at OmniFlix. All right, so Federico, do you want to introduce yourself real quick? Tell folks a little bit about you and your background.
Yeah, for sure, Jack. Thanks so much for the invite, by the way.
Oh yeah, for sure.
My name is Federico. I've been a software engineer, Cosmos for it's been 4 years now. And
I think you started before I did.
I actually did when I was it's kind of like a interesting ride because I first become involved with Cosmos while I was at UC Berkeley, where I was part of this educational college group called Blockchain Berkeley, where we would work in different topics, especially around education, consulting, and R&D on crypto back in 2017. And a team member of that group was the one and only Sunny Argaba. And Sunny was by that time dropping out UC Berkeley and joining full-time Tendermint to work on Cosmos. So my story with Cosmos in general was I got an internship back then. I started working on Peggy, which was now renamed to Gravity Bridge, as an intern. And then after that, we've I joined full time as an employee, started working on the Looney wallet, which was formerly known as Voyager. And then I joined as a core engineer on the protocol level on the SDK framework that Cosmos was building back at the time. I've helped ship Gaia, which is a Cosmos Hub implementation. And also, since 2019, I've been heavily involved in IBC development, which is going live this next Monday. Which well, the product, it's live already, but transfers are being enabled. So that's kind of the interesting part of this protocol. It's applications that you can build on top of these core interoperability protocol that can allow you to communicate two different protocols, two different blockchains between each other.
A lot of people don't know that Fedi wrote the first version of the IBC module that has been slowly iterated on over and over again. And at a time when IBC was kind of still a collection of dusty phrases out of the white paper, Fedi was putting some code down and really pushing that project forward and keeping the flame alive. So yeah, one thing that you just talked about that I want to circle back to a little bit is blockchain at Berkeley. There are a lot of Cosmos people for blockchain at Berkeley and the classes around. Yeah.
So the story around blockchain Berkeley and Cosmos is primarily because when we were at this blockchain Berkeley student club, we were talking with different protocols. The one that was actually located in Berkeley because one of its founders was living in Berkeley back then. And so we became heavily involved with the team. And I remember actually taking one class at the Blockchain for Developers decal course that was taught by members of this club to all students at UC Berkeley. And I remember Jay Kwan coming and showing us like Cosmos and showing us the Cosmos SDK and showing us how to build our own blockchains back in the days, where like I think like only Bitcoin on Ethereum was like really known in the space, like in terms of development, and there were like a ton of ICOs happening back then, Cosmos included. So it was like that's how the relationship.
Early 2017, yeah.
Early 2017, right?
Yeah, you know, as far as folks in the ecosystem that came out of blockchain at Berkeley, Federico, Sonny, who he mentioned, Chris Goes, who was the IBC team lead.
Chris was not from Chris was not from blockchain Berkeley, but
that's right. Aditya
but the rest
was.
Of the rest of the
Colin
IBC,
Axner.
yeah. So three out of 4 of the core IBC team are members of a former blockchain Berkeley.
Yeah, that was, and you know, for my personal experience, I also was living in Berkeley at the time and started working in that office, and that team from blockchain at Berkeley was just fantastic. I went and did a couple of code workshops over there too, and it's just a great community at UC Berkeley. So yeah, that's pretty cool. So, Fedi, IBC transfers enabled here soon on the hub on Monday. What do you anticipate are some of the first things to happen once we have transfers enabled?
I mean, there's definitely going to be like a lot of experimentations. There are like only a few connections ready to handle like transfer between different chains. Like 2 of the most like renowned chains have already established connections with the hub are IrisNet and Akash. I think it's also like enabling transfer soon. So those are going to be like, as far as I know, the 2 first chains that are going to be connected directly to the hub. But many more are likely to follow once like they start thinking that the software is mature enough that they can handle the complex user experience of maintaining token balances coming from different sources. So I expect a lot of experimentations in this first phase.
Yeah, I agree. You know, the tooling is also kind of coming up to snuff. It's I'm really excited to see the Kepler IBC experience, which should be pretty fun. But yeah, it's like I was working yesterday on a crypto.com connection with the hub and the Akash connection with the hub, and you know, it is. I think as Cosmos engineers, we are much more comfortable working in our test suites and building these like really great testing environments and test nets and stuff. But when it comes to working on live networks, because most Cosmos networks don't support smart contract deployment, it's a bit of a new experience for us. And you know, it's exactly. The errors that we're getting out of the IBC code are pretty fun, and exposing some random bugs in the software that need to be worked out. And I think that process is really cool.
Yeah, the process, like the handshake process, that you need to set up for like establishing a connection between like clients and also like connections and channels between like 2 different chains is somewhat like a tedious process, but it's all has been like automated through the relayer, which is this really important component of IBC, which is this process that allows you to relay packets of data, and this data can be literally wherever. In the case of transfers itself, it will like it will define like properties for the amount of tokens, the sender address, and the recipient address. But because IBC was built in such a modular way with this packet abstraction and packet data, that you can build like the interesting part is what can you do with that data? What can that data be meaningful for an application? And in this case, there are like unlimited use cases, and transfers are just going to be like the kind of like the ERC20 standard for Ethereum, just like the bare basic use case, on top of which will develop like numerous like DeFi applications and use cases regarding like interoperability.
What's an example that we can use to help the viewers understand sort of like, because there's a lot of talk about arbitrary application protocols. You know, the one that comes to mind for me is like the band protocol Oracle stuff. But like, do you have one where you think like, oh, here's an arbitrary application protocol that would be easy to talk about?
So like the first use case, of course, is like transfers. Then on top of that, you can build like follow-ups that pretty much like take the same standard, but you can use it for other like token types like NFTs. You could do like IVC transfers of NFTs, and you can relate to other chains that support NFT that are NFT compatible. And then on top of that, you can use like the first DeFi use case, I would say, is like yield farming on the Interchain. So, like combining this with service abstractions on the relayer side, you can build like really interesting features like interchain workflows. Interchain workflows is what I call like a bundle of IBC transactions and of IBC packets that are bundled together and are like working an atomic way, so that you can, like as a user, if you want to like yield farm across different protocols in the interchain, you can define like a set of like series of transactions that you want this workflow to execute, and be atomic in a way of like, if any of those transactions fail, or you can roll back them, and then you can like if it executes successful, you can come up with whatever outcome of those transactions that you were meaning to. So the combination of the services that you can build on top of that relayer, plus the flexibility that the IBC protocol can allow, is just like such a powerful tool that you can enable yield farming directly on the interchain with these mechanisms.
Yeah, you know, that interchain workflows example is interesting, and you mentioned atomic transactions, which is also kind of interesting, because when you're in a single execution environment like Ethereum, you know, when all of the transactions are being processed in the same execution environment, that property is just sort of inherent in that system. Whereas when you're using something like IBC, that's really kind of complicated, and there's latency moving between the different chains, things aren't being processed by the same state machine, you have to have certain hooks within the protocol that allow you to build this synchronous property and build that atomicity. And you know, IBC has been built in such a way that enables that. But at its core, the programming model is actually asynchronous, which is even more powerful and allows for better abstractions in a lot of ways, as most programming languages support this kind of asynchronous programming. If you look in JavaScript, this is sort of the promises and async await. And you know what IBC is basically async wait for blockchains in some ways. But yeah, it's a cool paradigm.
So there, I think like yield farming on like DeFi applications on top of IBC, we'll probably see in the future some sort of like voucher tokens. So like kind of like what happened last year is when all these DeFi protocols started like also minting tokens for their users when they were like providing liquidity or putting some liquidity, like some tokens as collateral for the specific use cases. You can pretty much do the same with IBC. There are like different security abstractions there that every protocol will have to handle. And the tokens are probably most likely have to be minted on the receiver chain instead of like on the sender chain, because it's otherwise the transaction could fail, and you like pretty much mint new tokens. But there are like a ton of interesting use cases that can be like experimented with IBC.
Yeah, so let's kind of just pivot a little bit and talk about the Ethereum ecosystem. A lot of your work over the last couple of years has been kind of at the intersection of Cosmos and Ethereum. You've worked really closely on the Ethermint project. And with the level of excitement in Ethereum right now around DeFi, that expertise is in high demand right now. So what's it been like working at the intersection of Cosmos and Ethereum?
Ethermint is such an important project, I believe, and it has such an enormous potential that people are yet to realize the possibilities that an EVM compatible fast finality chain on Cosmos can enable with interoperability. So by enabling interoperability, you can pull in liquidity from all these different sources, and then you can use that liquidity within the composability of the smart contracts, right?
Yeah.
So you can, and this is another really interesting use case for IBC is IBC enabled smart contracts, which is something that I'm pretty excited about. IBC smart contracts will allow any of your Solidity or Viper smart contracts to talk IBC, and you will be able to say transfer tokens from your smart contract ERC20, an ERC20 representation of your tokens on your smart contract on the EVM, and then transfer them over as Cosmos coins to other or like as regular tokens, not necessarily ERC20s, to other protocols out there in the interchain. And this is just for transfers, but imagine that we had the same concept for like cross-chain smart contract calls. That is also like a really interesting use case for that IBC and Ethermint can enable.
Yeah, totally. Speaking of smart chain cross-contract calls, another area that's sort of at the intersection of Cosmos and Ethereum where you're working right now is the Gravity Bridge. And this is work you and I are doing right after this call. We're going to go to a stand-up to talk about the Gravity Bridge and cross-chain smart contract calls. But yeah, I mean, this is sort of where the future is going, these deeper integrations between these various chains and figuring out how to do this sort of permissionless composability across these abstraction boundaries. And it's really cool. You were working right now on the IL module, which is the ability to sort of like pull Uniswap liquidity from a Cosmos chain. Do you want to talk a little bit about how that works?
Yeah, so
the Gravity Bridge.
Yeah, so the Gravity Bridge is, so there's like different concepts of interoperability. We've talked about IBC, which allows BFT chains to talk to each other. It's a protocol that allows like any chain like that provide consistency of availability to talk to each other in like trustless manner. But for Nakamoto consensus proof of work chains, you have to, because you have the finality component, that you need to like wait for this certain period of confirmation before your transaction is kind of like included on the blockchain. You need to enable some sort of like pseudo finality. That means like when you wait, say like I'll wait for like 10 confirmations, and then like that will give me like probability of X% that my transaction is on chain, and then you can like pretty much relay events that, for example, your token was locked on the Ethereum side, and then you can mint like a Cosmos representation of that same asset.
That's very similar to how the IBC mint and burn protocol works for ICS20 assets. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how it works. There needs to be some finality, and the cool thing about this this bridge in particular is that it's secured by the validator set of the running chain. So on top of that, you can enable like custom logic for how you handle these tokens that you're receiving from Ethereum. And the way that's like the interesting innovation that Sommelier did here is using this as a coprocessor for Ethereum impermanent loss handling on different AMMs, particular like Uniswap. So you would relay those tokens, create a stop loss position. These stop loss positions allow you to like check for like a threshold that you want like your token. Like if you have like a high impermanent loss, then you would, for example, like submit execute this stop loss, which will prevent you from suffering more impermanent loss, which is this cost of opportunity of holding the token versus like providing liquidity. So then that will execute, and those transactions will be batched, and then because of this batching, they spend less gas than what a regular transaction on Ethereum would. If you're batching like 100 transactions, for example, or stop loss positions, you're like basically like splitting that gas price out of all those individual executions. And then the transaction will like go through the bridge, be relayed to Ethereum, and then the removal of the liquidity will happen on the smart contracts. So that's how the permanent loss.
Yeah, I mean, this is when we're talking about these sort of when we're talking about these kind of cross-chain workflows, this is a great first example of one. Would you say that?
Yeah, and then like that's really interesting as well, because like imagine that you have like with this custom handling that you have from the gravity bridge, you can also do some things like create an impermanent loss, and then I don't know, do like an IBC transfer at the same time with those tokens that represent the impermanent loss, and then you can do all sort of like different decentralized finance interaction with all these different tokens. The same way that you can do that with ERC20 tokens, like by minting like one token on one side, and by unlocking the sending token on the other side of the bridge, you can do pretty much the same with NFT tokens. So you can create an NFT. So for example, that Uniswap V3 is like representing like all these Uniswap like liquidity positions as NFTs. Sommelier could potentially like create this NFT representation of those non-fungible liquidity position tokens, and then do whatever like on the execution environment on Cosmos to help retail like liquidity providers help manage their positions in a better way and rebalance their positions in order to serve better liquidity.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you guys have checked out the Uniswap V3 interface, but it is very different than the sort of aping into a pool that you are used to doing with Uniswap V2. There's a lot more bells and whistles. There's a lot more need for automating and monitoring positions. And yeah, looking forward to feeling out that use case, but I can imagine few things better for a coprocessor for Ethereum to do than to help users manage their liquidity on something like Uniswap. So Yeah, that's kind of what Federico and I are working on during the day. So I don't see any user questions in the chat, but if you've got any, now is a great time to drop them in there. Federico, before we wrap this up, do you have any last things that you want to plug or anything that you're excited about?
Yeah, in general, like I'm really excited about like Ethermint, all things happening with IBC and especially like Sommelier as well. I think like this year is going to be, well, besides like the NFT hype that is going on, I think this is really going to be like the year of interoperability between chains. There are a number of projects that are like focusing on interoperability, not only on like Cosmos and Polkadot. We have been like in this game for quite some time. We now have Sommelier, which like are enabling these interesting use cases between Cosmos and Ethereum, and they're like also this like L2 trend on Ethereum for scaling purposes, and like L2 versus side chains difference. And so it's really a tough space to be in, but I think we can achieve much more through collaboration and connection of these chains than just like fighting over, as we've been doing all this time with L1s.
Yeah,
because
yeah.
Everyone wanted to be like the king or the mother of all blockchains, and well, certainly that position will always be for Bitcoin. And by enabling this like interoperability, you can create like incredible use cases that we've never experienced before.
Yeah, the way that I like to think about it is Bitcoin can't scale to support the entire planet in the way that crypto needs to. And we need to build some of these other systems that interconnect, but retain these properties of permissionlessness and trustlessness that Bitcoin has pioneered. And that's exactly the vision that we're building here at Cosmos. One with no, higher level entities that are in charge, and, if you spin up your system, you are in charge of that system. And yeah, it's a really powerful paradigm, and more people are really kind of coming to see how exciting it is. So with that, I think now is the time to wrap up and to jump over to stand up, Fede. So thank you very much for your time this morning. I really appreciate it. And thank you guys
for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. We got to do this again when we launch Sommelier. And thank you very much for your time, and thanks for coming. And I do want to thank the sponsors again, the Sommelier Protocol, which we've talked a bit about today, and there's a lot more coming on Sommelier. And we're going to start getting louder on Twitter and a bunch of other places. So please keep a lookout and come jump on our Telegram, as well as OmniFlix Media, who does production for this show. So please go check out omniflixmedia.com. It's a full service media production and publication network, along with links to CDNs, that is natively blockchain and built on top of the Cosmos SDK by Sisla and team. So thank you guys very much, and see you all next week.
But